over a new way of entering into the arm saddle that I really, really like, that I think has major advantages over the first way that we looked at, okay? So I come up to you. Actually, come over here, go on your back first. Okay, so, yeah, just go down your back and just turn this way. All right, guys, so there is a move from top, okay, that we call a Rau. Hey, guys, a little bit quieter, please. There's a move from top that we call a Rau drag. Okay, so this is a Rau drag. Okay, if he's framing on me, right? One way we can look to like mess up his frames is what we call a Rau drag. Okay, so I'm pushing the wrist and pulling the elbow, and now here he has no frame obviously, right? And I can move forward to passes with an underhook. I can immediately start potentially attacking the arm. Okay, so that's a Rau drag from the top position, right? There's a move that I've been seeing these guys that train at a gym called Movement Art in Pennsylvania use, which I've been calling a bottom Rau drag. So it's essentially the same move, but on the bottom, and you use it in order to start moving into an arm saddle with certain advantages over the more traditional like shoulder crunch style entries into the arm saddle. So just come here for a second. When I grip a shoulder crunch, my elbow is really far from his, right? Right? Because I'm at the shoulder, obviously, right? So I'm controlling his shoulder well, but the rotation of his wrist, I'm not doing anything to prevent that. So bring your wrist backwards. So that's why usually when we enter the arm saddle, he can bring his wrist back and defend it. And usually you don't get the arm bar right away with an arm saddle. Usually you get to the position and then he defends, and then you have to like get through his defenses, okay? So, but if I go here, I am controlling the elbow, right? Because I'm low. Right here, he goes to bring his wrist back. He can't because my elbow's blocking it. But the reason we don't do this with a shoulder crunch, okay, is because here, it would be very easy for him to rotate his wrist down and take it out. So we don't do that, right? We go at the shoulder. That's why this is called a shoulder crunch, we don't call this an elbow crunch, right? This you can hold, but it has the weakness of it doesn't control the wrist. If I go here, okay, I can prevent the wrist from, sorry. So in a sense, actually, so that's interesting. In a sense, right, I'm controlling the wrist in one direction, but not in another. I can't stop that, okay? So I can stop, if I go at the elbow, I can stop from going that way. He goes that way. No, the other way. Yeah, I can stop that, but if he goes down, I can't stop that, right? Does that make sense, guys? So, with the bottom Rau drag, you kind of get the best of both worlds in a sense, right? So with this entry, we're not gonna wait for him to get a full crossface. If he does, it's not impossible, but it'll be harder to get this move. I'm gonna, as he's coming towards me, I frame at the bicep, okay? Now, my left hand goes underneath. Okay, again, we don't wanna go over because that gives him space to do that, right? If I go over, he punches over the top, yeah, I'm in trouble, right? If I go under, if he comes towards me, I still have frames. Okay, I have a good elbow to knee connection. I can push underneath his chin. It's still very strong, okay? So I go under the chin. Now, from here, I'm gonna go wrist to wrist, and look, my hand, my right hand goes underneath, and I get a bottom Rau drag. Now from here, I push, I get my knee across, I go here. Now, once I get to this point, I'll connect my hands, and look, my right elbow acts as a wedge against his wrist. So when he goes to bring his wrist to the inside, right, that's what he would like to do to defend his arm. When he goes to do it, it's difficult because my right elbow is a wedge. Again, I'm pulling down. And if I were to do this from like from here, it's not the same thing, right? The difference is I'm doing it, so I'm here, and I'm not connecting my hands until my knee is like in place. Now he can't crush me because my knee is defending me. Right now I can roll onto my right hip. I pummel this leg with the top, and I have a really strong like arm bar here. And when he goes to bring this, I can catch the wrist very easily, and I have a very strong arm bar. Okay? So again, I block. I go underneath the chin. Bang. We go into the bottom Rau drag. Okay? What this is going to allow us to do is use our elbow as a wedge against his wrist. Okay, that's the entire basis of this move. Okay? Does this make sense, guys? Do you want to translate that into Chinese so I know that? Okay, so this is everything here. This is the whole point of this. Yeah, this is the whole point of this. So now look, we're here. Now I pull this here. And you have a really good entry into the move. And the finish, it's pretty simple, right? We have one finish here. One finish, we can go belly down. I'll do it light. And then if he rolls, you can finish him here. Okay? Let's look at it one more time. A question, yeah?
So like when you do the crunch, so your forearm is basically like parallel to his forearm, right? Instead of like crunch on his
you mean like when I go, like, so for instance, like if we're, let's say if I'm at a shoulder crunch versus the thing we're doing at the elbow?
Yeah, because I see like your forearms like pretty much parallel.
Yeah, so in a shoulder crunch, as much as possible, I'm gonna try to get my elbow high. With this elbow grip, I don't really think that's what you want to do. You want to, instead it's more about pushing, like I think you're using like the correct word, like it's parallel to the floor.
Yeah, this is
I'm not doing this. Yeah, this is what I want. I just want to take my bicep, just stay down there. I just want to take my bicep and push that way. Not this. Okay, and then my head is here and I'm here. And then we can go to here. Okay, so one more time. Does that answer your question? Does that make sense?
No. The second entry you call the trow drag or whatever.
A Rau drag?
You did a Rau drag when you enter the position, like your forearms like this.
You mean they're like an X?
Yeah.
Yeah, think of it as like an X. Or I would think of it as like an X. Right, your arms are making like an X shape.
Yeah, that's why.
Yeah, so a good way to think of it, this might help, guys. Go down, watch, come over here. Do you guys know what an X pass is?
X?
I think they do. You probably do. Like, if I'm like Toriandoing, like this kind of a pass, right? Do you guguys know this kind of a pass, right? It's this. You can think of a Rau drag as kind of like you're doing the same thing with your arms, right? So if I'm here, right, you half frame. Right, you have this Rau drag here. Look, you see what my arms are doing, guys?
就它的那个小臂和它的那个小臂形成一个 X 形，所以刚刚他的那个我问他那个问题，相关的。
Right, an X pass. See my arms, guys? It's pretty similar, right? It's kind of a similar kind of thing you're doing with your arms, right? Does that make sense, guys? Just that answers your question.
就他进去的时候，他的那个手肘其实是插着他的那个小臂，而不是不是这样子和他的那个。手肘垂直的，不知道你听不听？
Yes.
手这样的，不是这样的。
All right, let's give it a try, guys. 1, 2, 3. Now we're going to break down a match where we're going to see this Rau drag from the bottom entry into an arm saddle. This is something that I've only really recently started experimenting with, so I don't want to make any like sweeping, conclusive statements about it yet, right? Like, oh, this is going to replace the shoulder crunch, blah, blah, blah. But I do think that for sure, one statement that I am confident in making is that the advantages of this style of entry make it worth using, right? There are probably going to be times where the shoulder crunch style is the better option. I think that style is a little bit easier to like hold on to the guy. And I find sometimes if someone sees the bottom Rau drag coming, it can be a little bit easy to stop, like if they know it's coming, right? But if you can get it going, I do think it is really effective for the reasons I pointed out that we're going to highlight here. So let's just watch the clip. He goes for like kind of a, not really a Rau drag. Then he goes for the Rau drag and he's able to get it. You can see the value of it. He gets the finish there. Finish is not even that important for what we're looking at. Okay, first thing, this first entry is not a Rau drag. It's basically a shoulder crunch style. Okay, and he's able to gain shoulder height and rip his arm out. Okay, that can happen with any style of grip you make, right? That's not something specific to the shoulder crunch or to the Rau drag. Either of these can lead to someone raising their shoulders and pulling their arm out. In situations like that, so a really good match to watch for that problem being used or happening again and again and again is Ono Flanagan at Grapple Fest. I always forget the name of the number of the event and the name of his opponent, but it was the only Grapple Fest that I ever did. So if you find my one Grapple Fest match, okay, on that same card, Ono Flanagan goes against a Polish guy, and the Polish guy was this big, strong, like muscle-bound guy, and he's not really engaging Owen's guard. He's basically just trying to not get submitted, and he succeeds. He loses a decision, but he doesn't get submitted. And Owen keeps going for the shoulder crunch style arm saddle entry and really struggles with the guy raising his shoulders up and ripping his arm out, essentially just like this guy does here. Now, what you can try to do is you can catch this early enough, you could switch into leg locks, right? So hypothetically, he could have Nick here could have thrown this leg over the top, gone into like an outside ashi or something, right? But yeah, I mean, it's tough because he's also posting right after he pulls his arm out, right? It's something to think about, right? And in that match that Owen had, I think that he did have some opportunities for that. But anyway, now, okay, first thing first, look at how immediately the hand, I think this is so nice how he sets this up. A lot of this move is based on timing. Like a lot of it is timing. It's a lot like, like an arm drag. Like I can teach you the mechanics of an arm drag, but it's, you have to really develop the sensitivity for it over time, right? Like imagine like trying to learn how to surf, right? You can't really understand the mechanics of that until you go through the experience of trying to like balance on the board, right? Like no amount of like just descriptive explanation is going to get it through to you, right? There are some things wherein you can just give someone a step-by-step breakdown of how to perform this task. This is not one of those. This is one of those things where, look, you want to have the step-by-step description explaining to you of how to perform the task, but you also have to understand that you're not really going to understand the nuances of the mechanics until you feel it, okay? And that sensitivity to the move, it's going to take a little bit of time to develop. You've got to be persistent with it, okay? Anyway, look at how he senses the elbow exposed, right? He's extending his arm here. First thing he does, I mean, really, both of his hands are, you can see they're both ready to do the job that they have to do. This hand is ready to hit the elbow. This hand is ready to hit the wrist. And you can tell, like, I've never trained with Nick. I don't know Nick very well, but you can just tell based on how, sort of finely tuned his instincts are, that the opportunity is there. This is probably something he does all the time in the gym. So he catches right at the perfect spot. Okay, so if you look at the way his wrist is turned, this is definitely the stronger way to push if you have the wrist turned like towards the opponent. You can do it the other way, but I think this is stronger. Now he's going to pull here, push there. The ref gets in the way, but we still see he throws his legs over the top into a very, very nice arm saddle. Now here, the big danger is in this guy connecting his hand to his thigh or connecting to his other hand, his secondary hand. Nick recognizes that. He starts to push. The key thing here is how this arm, okay, is blocking at the wrist. Then he switches, he puts his hand there, extends, and gets the finish. Okay. So the value of this style of entry, okay, is two things. If you can get this arm deep enough, at first he doesn't have that, but he later adjusts, and if you see there what he did is he deepened it. So here it's relatively shallow. He would have preferred to have had the elbow a little bit more over here, which would have required the wrist to be a little bit higher over the tricep. But sometimes you can't get what you want right away. You have to work towards it, right? If you see here, he gets the initial entry, then he deepens right there. It's a little bit tough to see. This is a very nice adjustment. You see the hand goes here, he pushes, and then you can't see it super well, but you can see it a little bit. His right arm deepens around, and when I say deepen, I mean it goes further around his opponent's elbow. Okay, now he's in a position where his elbow, and in a sense also his forearm, is blocking the wrist. It's more difficult for this guy to grab onto his own thigh or his hands because of the position of his elbow relative to the wrist. And that's not typically something you see with the standard shoulder crunch entry into the arm saddle, right? Because, like as I pointed out in the technique part of the video, right, you're very close to the shoulder. You're doing a good job of controlling the shoulder, but you're far from the elbow. And because you're far from the elbow, right, he can get the wrist where he wants it defensively. Something I wish that I had pointed out in the technique part of the video, I didn't point this out properly, was that the wrist, the reason that he can't just, so I talked about how he can pummel the elbow, like point the elbow down and pummel the wrist out, right? The reason he can't do that here is because the wrist is turned externally to the elbow. So it's almost like he's being kimura'd, right? So yes, your elbow is going to be, like your grip is lower on his arm and your elbow, it doesn't have as much control of like the shoulder and stuff, right? As it would in a shoulder crunch. But because here you can't really see because the ref gets in the way, but the wrist goes outside the elbow, or we can even say maybe we want to call that inside the elbow. It goes inside the elbow. Essentially, the arm gets put into like a kimura position. Because the arm gets put into a kimura position, what this guy would want to do to free his elbow in that way by pummeling the elbow down is get his wrist over here. But that's exactly what you're pushing against. You're pushing it in this direction. So he can't, so you're blocking his elbow movement in both directions. He can't, it's difficult for him to bring the elbow or his wrist to here because your elbow is blocking his elbow from rotating this way towards his own hip. And he can't bring it down either because the wrist has been forced, we can say, internally, right? So it's difficult for him to escape in either direction, all right? And then really this move, what it does, in a sense, is it adds something very valuable to the arm saddle, which is the ability, I think, to more proactively force arm bars directly from the position. So the arm saddle, if you guys know the history of the name, of how it was named, I was messing around with this position, and I had seen a lot of people use it, but I hadn't seen a name for it. I had a student named Max Meenan who we were talking about the position and like how it worked. And we were comparing it to the saddle or the cross-ashi position, which is a position where if the guy knows how it functions, if the defensive person knows how it functions, they can defend and not get tapped here, but it usually will lead to other things, right? So the initial threat in cross-ashi or the saddle, the inside heel hook, and then here in the arm saddle, the straight arm bar, those initial threats usually don't actually happen because there's a good defense, but then it leads into other things. So it functions in a similar way. You got the leg saddle, the cross-ashi, and then the arm saddle, right? So that's the origin of the name. And the whole point of the name is that it's hard to get the arm bar directly from this position. Well, interestingly, this kind of solves that problem. This allows us to do something which makes it actually very difficult for him to defend the elbow of his isolated arm, right? The defense is all coming down to his ability to use his wrist to like grab onto his thigh or his own hand, his secondary hand, which would be in this case this guy's right hand. If he can't do that, if you can keep his wrist essentially away from his body, you can fully extend and isolate the arm and get an armbar, right? So it's a really valuable addition to this position. I have just started working on it myself, but I really think that it is something that is going to be a big part of my arm saddle game going forward.